Greetings, greetings. Happy Wednesday, April the 29th, 2026. Today we are going to be talking about something that's going on right now, particularly in the state of Texas, where there is an inmate, James Broadnax, who is currently scheduled to be executed by the state of Texas tomorrow. And there have been proponents for him to try to see if they could stay that execution for 30 days to look more into the case, since his cousin, that is his co-defendant in the case, has come out and said that he was the shooter. Now, just to give a little bit of context about this, back in 2008, James Broadnax, the person who's supposed to be executed tomorrow, in fact, and his cousin, Demarius Cummings. So they are arrested for the robbery and murder of Stephen Swan and Matthew Butler in Garland, Texas. So just to give a little more context, Mr. Butler and Mr. Swan were executives of a Christian music label in Garland, Texas, and their studio was, I guess, in a nice area where Mr. Cummings and Mr. Broadnax came up with the harebrained idea to go and rob someone there. And they ended up killing these gentlemen. Um, a robbery gone bad, but I think all robberies have already gone bad once they become a robbery, but that's a side note. Um, but so anyway, these gentlemen end up being shot and killed. And of course, when Mr. Cummings and Mr. Broadnax went in their wallets or their pockets to try to recover the money from them that they thought they were going to get, apparently there was only $2. Um, but anyway, long story short, right now there's a whole controversy of should he get the should this execution be stayed? Should the state proceed with the execution tomorrow? Well, all of his appeals have been declined. So far, the state has turned down any stay of execution, and so tomorrow, um, barring any type of miracle down there at the Capitol here in Austin, here at the Capitol, I should say, but barring anything there, um, you know, this could be Mr. Broadneck's last day here on Earth, and I can't imagine what goes through your mind. Anything could happen to any of us on any given day when we don't know it, right? Things could just happen, accidents, different things could happen. But when you're actually faced with the penalty, the death penalty, and Texas is one of those states that, we still honor the death penalty when it calls for it. It doesn't happen all the time. Um, but in this scenario, again, two Christian music executives were the victims, it should have never happened. I mean, but I wanted to just kind of give a quick overview. So this happened in 2008. Mr. Broadnix was um, convicted in 2009 and sentenced to the death penalty, sentenced to be executed. And tomorrow is that day, April the 30th, 2026, is his day to be executed. Now, his cousin, who initially said he didn't do it, he wasn't the trigger man, had nothing to do with it. And Broadnax, James, the gentleman we're going to hear from, may hear from both of them, but the gentleman that's going to be executed tomorrow, if nothing else happens, um, initially he admitted to it. And I'm going to show you that here in just a minute. But he admitted to doing it, and he did it in a pretty. He was pretty nonchalant about the way he went about it. So, without further ado, I'm gonna let a little bit of this play, let you hear from, get an overview of what actually happened, hear from the inmate himself, and find out what do you guys think. What do you guys think about this scheduled execution for tomorrow? So let's see here.
Two people. A crime that later got him sentenced to death. Broadnax was born in 1988. He dropped out of school in the 10th grade, and as so many others his age and in his situation do, he had turned to drugs as often as he can. His drug of preference was PCP, according to reports. Broadnax also wrote rap lyrics and kept notebooks filled with handwritten verses. And you should know that some of the lyrics that he wrote were actually used against him by prosecutors at his trial. And after killing two men in need of money for drugs, the most he and his accomplice found in the pocket of one of the two men that were murdered was $2. That's what he got, $2. They also used one of the victims' 1995 Ford Crown Victoria to get back home. Broadnax would later say that he had set out to rob because he was in need of money to get him back to his hometown of Texarkana, but it seems nobody really believed that. During the late night hours after what was now June 19th of the year 2008, Broadnax had gotten together with his cousin Demarius Cummings, who was the same age as Broadnax, 19. While at Cummings' apartment in South Dallas earlier in the evening, where Broadnax was also staying, they made plans to go rob someone of their money. Now, Cummings' mother, Broadnax's aunt, had an AK-47 rifle, but that would be too big to take with them. So Broadnax borrowed the rifle from his aunt and exchanged it with someone on the street for a smaller handgun. Shortly thereafter, they got on a train and they left Dallas and traveled to Garland, Texas, about 32 miles away. Broadnax would later say that the reason they chose Garland was because there are mostly rich white people in that area. Meanwhile, sometime after midnight, 28-year-old Matthew Butler and 26-year-old Stephen Swan were working late at Zion Gate Records, a music studio owned by Matthew Butler. The studio typically recorded Christian music. Stephen was a sound engineer. Matthew was described as a committed Christian, a loving husband, a father, and the beloved son of his parents. Here we see Matt standing outside his recording studio alongside his dad. When Matthew and Stephen had completed their session sometime about 1 o'clock in the morning, they left Zion Gate Records and locked up. Just outside the recording studio, they were approached by two young men, James Broadnax and Demarius Cummings. Broadnax and Cummings pretended to engage the two recording studio men with some friendly conversation. Broadnax had first asked if they had a cigarette. They then began asking questions about what kind of music they produce and other friendly chit-chat questions. But a moment came when Broadnax retrieved the handgun that he was carrying and began shooting both Matthew and Steve. After rifling through their pockets with the men down on the ground, they retrieved a total of $2 inside one of the wallets and some car keys. Broadnax and Cummings got inside of Steve's 95 Ford Crown Victoria with the wallet and the $2 and drove back to Dallas. Shortly after 1 o'clock in the morning, a local riding his bicycle and going past Zion Gate Records saw the two men lying dead on the ground. And because there was a fire station nearby, he quickly went there and reported what he saw, and Garland police were notified. Once back in Dallas, Broadnax returned the handgun to his acquaintance on the street, and he got the AK-47 back, which he then returned to his aunt once they were back in the apartment. While there, Broadnax, with people around in the apartment, bragged about the murders and even showed some of the people there Steve's driver's license. Broadnax had also said that he was going to go sell the car. Later, Broadnax and Cummings removed the Ford's license plates and replaced them with plates from a Cadillac. After that, Broadnax and Cummings went to a pawn shop where they pawned some tools that was in the victim's car. They then drove to Broadnax's hometown, Texarkana. Apparently, along the way, they had also stopped to pick up an 18-year-old named Lonnie Harris. Meanwhile, a friend of Broadnax's aunt, who was in the apartment and overheard the entire conversation when Broadnax and Cummings were there, had seen news on TV about the two murders in Garland, and she picked up the phone and called Garland police and told them exactly who they need to look for. In Texarkana, a police officer ran the license plate on the Ford going past him, and he saw that those plates were registered to a Cadillac. So he did a traffic stop on the Ford. He then ran the...
Okay, so I'm gonna stop that right here. Just for the simple fact to summarize, so this man is from Texarkana, Texas. He got a gun from his aunt. It was an AK-47. It was too big to carry out the crime, so they decided to go and swap it out with a handgun from someone in the street. They drove to Dallas, or they drove to Garland in order to do this with the idea that they were going to get a big lick, a big score from somebody on the street, and they decided to go and they came across these two guys at the recording studio. Again, one of them owned the recording studio, the other one was an engineer. And, one of these guys was a Christian and a father, and they produce Christian content. And to be frank, hang on, let me find another interview with this guy here because I want to see, you know, what I want to know is, who thinks this guy should have his execution stayed, right? So there's a couple of different conversations with him, right? There's the initial, hold on, let me see here.
Apparently you can go from zero to a complete site in just a single prompt with Wix Harmony. I don't know if this is going to be possible. Or Vibe.
1 month before his scheduled execution, a stunning new development could change the fate of a Texas death row inmate. James Broadnax was condemned for a double murder in Garland in 2008. But now his cousin and co-defendant, who was sentenced to life in prison without parole, says he was the shooter and not Broadnax. Fox Sports' Sean Rabb has been following this case that got national attention then.
I mean, that's something that you would say to try to save your cousin. It seems like once you've been already convicted, they can't go back. They've already charged him, so.
And now he joins us from the newsroom. Sean.
Yeah, James Broadnax has a team of attorneys working for him from Dallas to D.C. to New York. And now in new filings, those attorneys argue this confession by his co-defendant cousin is new evidence that undermines the state's case for James Broadnax's conviction and death sentence, a case that took the breath of the nation and the idea that two men were killed for $2. In addition to that, my interview where both of them voluntarily told their story and their roles in this case.
So this is the part that I want you guys to think about. So when we're asking, so there's people are divided on whether or not this individual should have his execution stayed. Of course, people are going to make it a race issue because the two criminals were black and the two victims were white. I think it's wrong regardless, but that's what it is. And at the end of the day, it's a matter of justice for the victims. And some people feel like, you did the crime, you should, pay the price. But I want you to know what you guys think. Listen at how this guy, he does an interview with the guy and when he describes the crime, and I want you to hear that. And then he changes his tone later, of course, with time, but let's hear this.
Roles that with this confession now change. This was the crime scene outside a Garland Christian music recording studio in 2008. Stephen Swan and Matthew Butler were shot and killed during a robbery. The double murder shocked North Texas. James Broadnax, 19 at the time, and his cousin Demarius Cummings were arrested and charged with capital murder. I interviewed both in jail. Cummings showed remorse for the violent crime, adding he did not kill anyone. Broadnax, in an expletive-filled conversation, told the story and said he kind of regretted what he did. Here now is my report, interviewing both men, June 2008.
You know what I'm saying? We just
Jail, James Broadnax and Demarius Dwight Cummings talk about what happened last week when they killed Matthew Butler and Stephen Swan outside a Garland recording studio.
The chopper was too big to rob somebody with, so we had one that got the pistol.
The two trading an AK-47 for a handgun before taking the dart from South Dallas to Garland.
I decided to go hit a lick, you know what I'm saying? And one of the best spots to go, because that's where all the rich white folks stay at, you know what I'm saying? So got caught him slipping. She ain't popped his. That's what it is.
Without as much as a blink, James Broadnax talks about how he took two lives.
Blank, you know what I'm saying? I shot him, like stumbled back, shot the driver. He hit the ground, you know what I'm saying? But he like leaned up like he was finna try to get back up. So I shot him in the head. Then his homeboy, I shot his again, you know what I'm saying? But he was still trying to run off. But I knew he was gonna die anyway. But just to make sure, pop, shot his. Like, you know what I'm saying, twice in the head or whatever. Me and my kinfolks ran their pockets. You know what I'm saying? He jumped in the driver's seat, I jumped on passenger side, and we dipped out.
How much money did you guys get?
No, he had $2 in his wallet, you know what I'm saying?
Describing his life as, quote, hell, Broadnax says he has nothing to live for.
I don't want life.
You don't want life.
Pick one. If they don't, I will.
How do you feel today, Mr. Cummings?
I feel real bad. You know, I feel that was wrong what we did. You know, I know how their family felt to feel about it. You know what I'm saying?
So how do you feel now?
You know what I'm saying? I kind of regret what I did, but shit can't change. I know you was crying though.
What do you want them to know about you?
I want them to know I didn't kill nobody. I didn't kill her husband or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
But you do admit you contributed to it.
Yeah, I contributed to it, but I didn't kill him though.
You sorry it happened, sir?
Yes, sir.
What do you want to say to the families of the two men you killed?
Straight up.
Broadnax was convicted and sentenced to death.
All right. So at the time of his confession, when the reporter asked Broadnax, whatever, how do you, what would you like to say to the family of the victims that you killed? He just said, F them. And in that confession, I didn't see a lot of remorse. It was very cavalier, very cold, very, nonchalant. So you took two lives. You were involved in taking two lives, whether or not you're the trigger man or not. But the cousin showed some remorse, not saying that he shouldn't, you know, do his time as well. But I say when it comes to staying the execution, if you base it off of that interview and the way his mentality and attitude was, you know, again, and this is not a whether you're a pro death penalty or an anti death penalty person, because that's a different argument. But this is in the event that, you are pro death penalty in the situations where it's called for. Is this one of those situations where this man should receive a stay of his execution because now, after all those years, that was back in 2008, we're in 2026. So, 18 years later, and then I want to show a little bit of the change of Broadnax now, what his conversation is like, just see here.
A project that he was working to scale, and it looked super cool to me, and I'm like, man, I'm like seeing artwork, I'm into drawing, this sort of thing, but what he's doing and what he's telling me about it is just, it pulled me in, it just caught my attention. So like at that moment, it just sparked something in me where I'm like, man, I want to be an architect. Like I want to do what he does. When I was younger, school was, it became an escape to get away from home. Like I looked forward to going to school. I love learning science, all of that. So, but later it got to the point where I started losing interest. I began to like kind of transition into like this purely survival phase, because not just the toxicity of being abused physically and all of that. It's like I'm pretty.
So just in this quick glimpse, you can see a person who has, from 2008, fast forward years, he's facing, imminent execution, you could say, and you can see that he's a little bit nervous. His tone has changed. He's talking about all the things that he would have liked to have done if his situation, if his circumstances, his upbringing would have been different. Some of his interests, like being an architect and things of that nature, right? And time sometimes will change a person. That's the idea of the correctional facility, right? With enough time, you do change. Unfortunately, in this case, two people were murdered, and he and his cousin were convicted of those murders, and you know one sentenced to life, the other sentenced to death. And so what people are arguing about and saying justice for James, now that his cousin has come out and confessed to the shooting and saying that he was the sole shooter, James didn't shoot him. Well, I think now that sentences have already been handed down, it would be hard for them to go back and, re-sentence the cousin and, swap sentences or whatever the case may be. So, what do you guys think? Should this guy have his execution stayed for 30 days, or should it happen?